What? I'm so confused. I'm so confused by this book. Is this worth continuing? And it kind of was, except it wasn't. Hey guys, so I thought for this month I would break this down into 2 wrap-ups because my wrap-up from June ended up being 45 minutes long because I just film snippets after reading each book and I don't really know until the end how long it's going to be. And then I decided to make this into 2, and I did not read very many books so far this month. This is a fairly small stack of finished books compared to what I had already finished by this point last month, but this is what I'm going to be talking about in the next few clips. This one's upside down. Manga always does that, messes it up. Yeah, unfortunately, my reading month has not gone as well as June did, but we're only halfway through July, so I'm hoping the latter half I will read more and better books, but my next focus is going to be Moby Dick, so I'm not sure that's going to happen. Speaking of Moby Dick, the live discussion that I'm going to be doing for that for the book club over here on my channel is going to be, I think, July 26th. I'll put up the date and time here. I'm going to be doing that with Holly and we're going to be discussing the book a bit. And then for August, Tiffany and I were going to be reading Finding Junie Kim, but I ended up hearing some like quite negative feedback about this book. The cover looks really cute. Turns out the book is not like that at all. And so after discussing it a bit with Tiffany, we've decided to read a different book. And honestly, she gave me a number of different book suggestions, but this one has been on my TBR shelf for a while. This is The Faithful Spy, true story, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and the plot to kill Hitler. So this is the book we're going to be reading for August instead. So if you were wanting to join in for that book club, we're not going to be reading this book, we're going to be reading this one. And this is a really cool, like, it's kind of graphic novel style, but then some pages are more like just illustrated novel. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. There's a kid at my door. I have read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's story in other forms before and enjoyed it, so I think this will be really cool. Plus, John Hendricks is one of my favorite illustrators, so I'm looking forward to finally reading this book. Okay, now let's get on to my clips talking about the books that I've read so far in July. I finished book 1, The Wind in the Willows. This is my pick for the Read Your Bookshelf challenge, which I just realized that next month is a book in the same genre, so I might struggle with that. But anyway, The Wind in the Willows. What do I say about this book? I hopped around with what I thought about it often. So we start out, and the first chapter I found really boring. We're following Mole. He leaves his house, he finds this water rat and kind of joins him on the river. Then after that, I found the next couple chapters interesting, and we are introduced to more creatures from the forest, from the Willows area. I don't really even know. And then most of the book is about Toad and his exploits on like stealing vehicles, and there's this really weird like mashup of animals and like humans. Okay, I guess this would be a bit of a spoiler. I wouldn't recommend this book. First of all, maybe I'm curious to read an abridged copy, but I don't know if I really even want to spend my time that way. But Toad ends up in jail, and the one person wants to help him get out and says, you can dress... Okay, no, I have to read you the words because this was hilarious. Okay, so she's telling him she could dress up as her aunt, who is a washerwoman. I think you could come to some arrangement by which she would let you have her dress and bonnet and so on, and you could escape from the castle as the official washerwoman. You're very alike in many respects, particularly about the figure. And I didn't realize at first, like, this is like a human woman that this Toad is going to dress up as, and people are going to be like, yep, that's the washerwoman. And he does. He fools so many people. What? I'm so confused. I'm so confused by this book. I don't remember what I rated it on Goodreads, either 2 or 3 stars. It's probably like 2.5. I don't know. I really like the cover. And the illustrations are done by Ernst Shepard, who did a lot of the Winnie the Pooh ones. And I like the illustrations. I like the physical book, but this, and the nice thing about the illustrations is that they took up a lot of space on some pages. But this book, it just is not for me at all. And I thought I knew that going in, and now I know that for sure. So I've read it now though. It's done. Okay guys, this is one of those times where I have a lot to say about a book, but I kind of don't want to give it too much time in the spotlight. I don't even know what to say about this book. It's Where the Forest Meets the Stars, and unfortunately this is one of the books one of my patrons recommended to me. I was supposed to read it in June, but it just got in from the library recently, so I read it now. And the bones of this book are so good, but I hated the execution. I started reading this when I was waiting to get passports renewed, done, whatever, and it was a 3-hour, well, I waited for 2.5 hours, then it took me like half an hour to do my stuff. And I purposefully only took this book, and by page 100, I was so tempted to quit. There's random creaks in my office all the time, like that's my window. I don't know what that was. I was so tempted to quit, but I didn't have anything else, and I was so sick of waiting and sitting on this hard chair, so I kept reading. Well, okay, actually no. Here's what I did. At page 100, I did the thing that some of my friends in high school would do, and I skipped to the end and was like, is this worth continuing? And it kind of was. Except it wasn't. I thought it was. So let me tell you about the book. The premise is there's this woman named Jo who's doing her like PhD or master's. She's working on something. She's in a cabin in the woods for the summer because she is studying birds. I think the indigo bunting or something. I've actually never heard of this bird because there's none where I live, but I want to look it up because it sounds pretty. And as someone who has kind of got into birding a little bit, like bird watching in the last few years, I mean, earlier this spring we saw a family of geese with 4 little babies come across our yard, and then later we saw them at a pond near us. Unfortunately, only 2 have survived, but I'm still following these geese. It's been like 2 months. They're looking huge and not so cute anymore, but I'm committed. Plus now there's little ducks that were born on our pond. Like, I was excited about the birding aspect. Anyway, right at the beginning of the book, Jo goes back to the cabin for a night, and there's a girl waiting for her. This girl tells her she's an alien. She's inhabited this other girl's body, hence why she looks like a human. And the girl's got like bruises all over her. And I wasn't sure, part of the reason I wasn't sure at page 100 if I wanted to continue was because I didn't know if this was going to be magic realism, because I am so not down for magic realism. And this might be a spoiler, so spoiler, it's not magic realism. That's what I figured out when I flipped forward. I was like, oh, okay, so it is worth reading. Okay, unspoiler now. So I continued reading because I was sitting there at the passport office, and I was committed to the basis of the book. I wanted to see what was happening with this girl, what they were going to do, like what her backstory was, how things were going to play out. But you guys, the rest of the book is, there's so many issues. First of all, there's way too much. There is a guy that lives near her, and the whole physical side of things, like that got a little too deep and intense for me, and it didn't even make any sense. Like there was just things that didn't make sense. I didn't like that. And then there's this other storyline that's like from back in the day, and the main character just loves that these people were in love, even though it was like completely adultery. And there's a lot of things I didn't like. The bones, I wish someone would just take the bones and rewrite it better. I gave it 2 stars. I feel like that's even generous. I can't believe I wasted so much time reading this book. I'm sorry, but definitely don't recommend it. Hopefully I'm gonna read something better now. That being said, like there were a few little things I did like this is one paragraph talking about our main character. She was talking about how you can connect with your parents through a book, and it says she did, and not only through that one. She had most of the books that belonged to her parents, and she read passages from them every night before she fell asleep or when she had insomnia. As she read, her fingers touched the same pages theirs had touched. Her father and her mother were right there with her. And as a reader, I mean, I love that. But the rest of the book, not really worth it. I read a graphic novel yesterday. It's called Skyward, which is funny because that's a Brandon Sanderson science fiction book that I really enjoy. And this is a graphic novel. This is in a world where all of a sudden the earth became like low gravity, and a lot of people just like floated up into space and got lost. Our main character's name is Willows. She was a baby when it happened, and I think we're like 20-ish years later. I don't remember. I feel like maybe she's a teenager. No, it says 20 years later. Okay, so she must be 20. And her dad knew that this was coming down the pipeline, and I'll leave it at that as far as the summary goes, because it's a graphic novel that is only, I don't know how many pages, because they hardly ever page graphic novels. Well, it's not very long. And I think I'm gonna give it like 3 stars. It felt a little disjointed. We got into the story almost a little too quick. I have a kid that needs me, I'll be back. Okay, so what I was saying, I think, is that like the story happened really quickly and there were things going on where I think we were supposed to care about what was happening to the characters, but I didn't know them at all yet. I didn't really care. I feel like the premise maybe was a good idea, but not executed well. This is a trilogy. I think there's 2 more volumes. I'm pretty sure it's a trilogy. I don't care to continue it, and because obviously I have a lot of people that watch my channel that have kids as well, and my daughter loves graphic novels. So one thing that I will say is there was like one panel where I was like, well, I'm not going to give this to my 12-year-old. The rest of the book was like fine, but there's just one little panel where I was like, no, I would hold off on this for a bit. So that really bothers me. I feel like if you're gonna have things in there that are for an older age, it doesn't make sense to me when it's only once, because everything else was totally fine. And then it just annoys me that that one thing was in there. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one 3 stars. This reading month is not going according to plan. I ended up DNFing my Patreon buddy read, but to be fair, she had already finished it and said she gave it a generous 2 stars. Frenchman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier, which is so sad because I love her atmosphere, but I actually don't remember how far I got. I read a certain amount, and because she finished it before me and I had an idea that it wasn't great, I decided to look up summaries, and pretty much the whole book is about a love affair. I don't care to read that. And like the beginning of the book, our main character Donna is already very unlikable, so I don't want to read about a love affair, but I'm like, especially in not wanting to read it if I really don't even like the main character, so that's too bad. This cover is still something else though, but I guess I will not be finishing this one. It's been a while, but I read Snow White with the Red Hair volume 6, so I read volumes 1 through 5 probably about a year ago. So picking up volume 6, the nice thing about manga is they do have a little bit of a summary at the beginning, if I can turn the page. Usually like this kind of first-ish page is a summary of what has happened so far, which was great. I did overall enjoy this story. I think I'm gonna give it like 3.5 stars, which is always hard on Goodreads. Does that mean I give it a 3? Does that mean I give it a 4? Depends. I need to let it sit a little bit. My biggest problem, while I enjoyed the overall storyline, there are a number of guys in this story. So the manga has no color. These are 2 of the male characters, and there's a couple more. When they're in black and white, I'm having a hard time figuring out who's who, and because it's been almost a year since I was introduced to these characters, since I read about them, I was really struggling. There was probably like 6 male characters, main male characters, and I was struggling. So they needed name tags. I wish it would have said like, this person is, you know, whatever. So I was struggling with following the storyline for a bit because I kept thinking like one guy was someone else and then this guy was this other guy. So that part was hard. Overall, I guess what I can tell you about this manga series is originally it starts out with this girl, I actually don't know how to pronounce her name, but she is the Snow White with the red hair, and this prince of her kingdom wants to, I don't think he even wants to marry her. He just wants her to live in his harem, and she's not down with that. So she runs away because he thinks her red hair is so different. And she ends up meeting, but not realizing that she meets the second prince of the kingdom that she runs away to, and ends up being friends with him and some other people. And yeah, so I guess the thing with manga, I read Spy Family, I think last month. I think volume 9. There is a point where it feels a little bit like a soap opera. All the things have to go wrong so they can fix all the things. I think a slightly more concise manga series would be a little better for me. Like I really enjoyed the beginning of Snow White with the Red Hair, really enjoyed the beginning of Spy Family, but there's a point where it's like, okay, I think I'm done with this story. I wish it would just wrap up. It's still going, but I think I'm going to be done with it. So I've enjoyed this. If you want to get started with manga, I feel like Snow White with Red Hair was a great place to start. That and Spy Family, I think they're very similar. This is less gruesome because there's not so much assassinating people as there is in Spy Family, but it's a fun series. It's just this point I feel like, okay, I'm ready to be done. So ending on like a decent note, but yeah, that's that one. And then I'm hoping I can finish another book before I have to wrap up this video. We'll see. And unfortunately, I was not able to finish the book that I really wanted to finish to conclude this wrap up. I'm like halfway through. Part of me just wanted to read it and then update this, but I don't think I have time today. So that is my wrap up for the first half of July. And hopefully, like I said before, my second half of July will be better. Hopefully I'll read more books that I really like and also just read more books. I don't know, quantity doesn't really matter, but I didn't really love any of these books, so that's always disappointing, but there's always the future. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, guys.